This is Dr. David Jockers, and today we're talking about anxiety and 14 ways to reduce anxiety naturally. We know as a culture, we're wired up for anxiety. In fact, 18% of American adults claim to suffer with chronic anxiety, where we're suffering from anxiety almost on a daily basis. 18%. That's almost 1 out of 5. We know women are twice as likely as men to deal with this. And ultimately, this is a big issue because when we have chronic anxiety, it's a sign that our brain is being overinflamed and ultimately overstimulated. And we're going to talk about what that means. Anxiety is actually a warning sign. When we have anxiety at a young age, it's a warning sign for brain degeneration. And we have an increased risk of neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia. So today in this presentation, we're going to go over the best foods to heal anxiety. We're going to go over really the best strategies, brain-based exercises, as well as natural things that we can be doing with our lifestyle to overcome anxiety naturally. We're going to go into some of the root causes of anxiety. So it's going to be an awesome presentation. Should be about 20 to 30 minutes long. So jump in. Hang in there with us. You're going to learn a lot. So let's get going. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. David Jockers. I am a doctor of natural medicine and a doctor of chiropractic, and I live in the Atlanta, Georgia area, all around the country at churches and organizations on a number of different health topics, but I have a unique specialty in an anti-inflammatory ketogenic diet, brain health, and overcoming chronic disease. This is my beautiful family, my wife, Angel, and Joshua, identical twins. And let's jump into the topic here. We're talking about anxiety. And so we know that anxiety is definitely a brain-based issue, but it can also be related to the gut and the adrenals. And we have something called the HPA Axis. And the HPA Axis means the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. So there's a part of our brain called the hypothalamus, which is kind of like an antenna. And the hypothalamus will sense the environment. And if it senses that there's any stress, if there's a need to raise up adrenal hormone and the ability to adapt to stress, it will send this hormone called corticotropin releasing hormone, which is a neurohormone. So it's a hormone that acts on nerve glands, goes to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is our master hormone, right? So it controls kind of the hormonal cascade of the body. The pituitary gland says, okay, we need more stress hormone. So it releases a hormone, neurohormone called ACTH, or adrenal corticotropin hormone, that goes to the adrenals and signals the production and secretion of cortisol, which is stress hormone to keep the blood sugar stable. It's a glucocorticoid. So it helps to reduce inflammation and helps to break down glycogen, which is stored sugar, to raise blood sugar. We also get an elevation in stress hormones like adrenaline. So this is kind of the normal activity that takes place. And when the brain senses, oh, okay, we've got enough stress hormone, then the hypothalamus no longer sends that CRH signal to the pituitary gland and the process stops. So this is what should be happening in our body on a regular basis. And when we look at really how our body processes stress in the brain, we've got not only the hypothalamus, but we've got these other key parts of our brain, particularly the amygdala. You can see that in red. The amygdala is part of our limbic brain, which has to do with emotions and really survival. And so ultimately, the amygdala is stimulated because we're worried about something or there's some sort of fear. The amygdala can dominate the rest of the brain because, again, our body is about survival. And adapting to stress is all about survival. So when the brain signals that, hey, there's some sort of major stress or fear, we've got to address this. And so the amygdala goes on. And oftentimes for many people, they'll develop anxiety. There's also these other parts of the brain. And you can see the anterior cingulate cortex, which is kind of a vertical line that goes basically from about the middle of the skull or the brain all the way to the front, runs through the frontal lobe. And that has to do a lot with basically allowing us to adapt to different social environments. It helps give us good social tact, so we're able to, in a sense, display the right emotion in the environment that we're in. And when the amygdala is firing high, oftentimes the anterior cingulate cortex can get real hot. And when that happens, we can end up with a lot of times with obsessive compulsive disorders, and just constant chronic worrying where we're up at night, we can't sleep. And oftentimes related to this wind up between the amygdala and the anterior cingulate cortex. Now, other areas of our brain get affected because when the amygdala and the anterior cingulate cortex are riding high, then this dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is not able to function well. And that has to do with really like drive, goal setting, being motivated, getting stuff done. So really fear and stress, this is how it paralyzes us because we get this amygdala anterior cingulate cortex firing high, giving us kind of obsessive worrying. And then that shuts down that ability to really create a game plan, get stuff done, stay on task, be motivated and inspired. And obviously we just sit there kind of like paralyzed in fear. It also shuts down the hippocampus, which has to do with learning and memory. So basically when we have chronic stress, we really have poor memory overall. We don't retain or learn or memorize anything. This is why if you have like test anxiety and you're trying to study for a test, you're not going to do well. You need to relax, be in a relaxed state when you're studying, or else you're going to shut down your hippocampus and your ability to learn and remember things. So this is just a little bit of brain science to help understand these parts of the brain and their control, in a sense, their locus of control. So what we really want to do is keep the amygdala and the anterior cingulate cortex relaxed. There is a time and a place for them to be rising high. When we truly are in a life and death situation, it's extremely important. Okay, they're going to help us adapt to stress better. They're going to help, keep us alive. But for the most part, most of the things people are worrying about really are not that big a deal. And we need to be able to relax them and lock in and allow that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus to work well. Because the better we learn, the better we're able to remember and retain, the more motivated and on task and ultimately the more tenacity that we're able to display, which is that frontal cortex function, then the better off we're going to be. We're going to be able to overcome the fear. So let's jump into 14 ways to reduce anxiety naturally. And all these things are going to help to reduce activity in the amygdala as well as in the anterior cingulate cortex and increase activity in our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and our hippocampus. So little advanced brain science there. But these are things that all of us can understand. Stay hydrated. We got to really hydrate well. A lot of times people will say, drink an ounce of water half your body weight in ounces. So it's like, okay, if I weigh 160 pounds, I should drink 80 ounces of water. Well, I say, you know what? My goal is to drink an ounce of water per pound of body weight. I want to drink like 160 ounces of water throughout the day. And it may be in the form of herbal teas. It may be in smoothies or juiced greens. It may be in the form of bone broth. But ultimately, I want to get a lot of hydration in my body. Our brain is mostly fat and water. Fat, water, and minerals. And so we want to make sure we've got a lot of fat, water, and minerals in order to keep the brain functioning well. Hydration, when we're dehydrated, it's going to send a stress response up into the brain, and we're going to get that amygdala starting to fire high. A lot of times people get anxiety and obsessive compulsive issues, and really their body's really hydrated or dehydrated, and they just don't understand they've lost their thirst mechanisms, so they're not even responding to that. So we got to really focus on hydration. It's a daily goal. We want to make sure we're on an anti-inflammatory diet. I'm going to go more into details about that. Neurobics. So this is like aerobics for our brain. And this is something simple. We want to do things like using our non-dominant hand can be great for the brain to help relax the amygdala, the anterior cingulate cortex, to help activate the frontal lobe, the cerebellum. And these are things that are going to help support our brain. So using our non-dominant hand, using different senses, like thinking about what we smell. I tell my patients, hey, I want your food to smell really good. Use a lot of herbs because that actually helps stimulate parts of the brain. And it's really, really helpful for the brain. It's also helpful for digestive juice production. So neurobics, I have a whole article on drjockers.com on neurobics. So you want to check that out for more information. Visualization, if we're dealing with stress or anxiety about something, maybe it's like doing a presentation and we've got anxiety about speaking in front of people or anxiety about a test that we've got to take, or anxiety about some sort of circumstance in our life, one of the best things we can do is actually take time and visualize ourselves going through that. You know, this is what elite athletes do. Michael Jordan visualized himself shooting game-winning shots every single day. He'd visualize it. He literally visualized himself shooting 100 different game-winning shots every single day. So a reporter asked him one time, how do you continually be so successful when the game is on the line in the last couple seconds at making these game-winning shots? And he said, you know, if you understood how many times I saw myself making those shots, you would understand why I've been so successful. So he was just practicing this over and over and over again. So by the time he actually got into the game and in that situation, he felt comfortable and confident. And his ability to feel comfortable and confident downregulated that anterior cingulate cortex, right, as well as the amygdala, helps stimulate the prefrontal cortex to help him have better coordination, cerebellum activity there, better coordination, and just more cool and relaxed and better able to execute the game plan. And he was able to have success. So no matter what it is, whether it's test anxiety, speaking anxiety, right? Anxiety about anything. If you're pregnant and you're going to have a child, you're anxious about the birth, visualize this process. Seeing that in your mind's eye will help quiet the stress hormones and help you perform better. Deep breathing. I'm going to go in more detail about that. Avoid caffeine and sugar. These are stimulants, and these stimulants are going to drive up your blood sugar. In fact, blood sugar stability is probably the most important thing we need to start with when it comes to anxiety. And we'll talk more about that. But these things can overstimulate your brain. So be careful to avoid, if you deal with anxiety, come off of caffeine and definitely come off sugar without a doubt. Ground your body. I'm going to go into more detail about that, as well as your gut. Eliminating major food sensitivities is important. Laughing a lot, keeping a gratitude journal, you know, focusing on things that we're thankful for. That's one of the best things for activating that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Gratitude is one of the best things for your brain. It will help with your motivation and inspiration. It's going to help with your ability to retain memories. It's going to help your ability to stay on task and get things done and just have tenacity in life. And joy in life. So keep a gratitude journal. Keep focusing on what you're thankful for. Get out in the sunshine. That vitamin D stimulation helps drive up something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, which helps to regulate the neurotransmitters, prevent against overstimulation of the brain. Same thing with magnesium. Magnesium is to the body what oil is to a car. So we're constantly going through magnesium. The more stress we're under, the more magnesium we deplete. So make sure you're supplementing. If you have anxiety, number one supplement I use is magnesium, and it works wonders. I'm going to go through that, exactly what type of magnesium to use. And then finally, spend time daily in prayer. You know, give your thoughts over to the Lord. You know, He will set you free. He will literally set you free from anxiety. So every day, meditate on God's word and speak words of life over yourself. You want to be a person of life, you need to speak words of life. You need to feed your brain. Just like we want to feed our body good food, good nourishment, we need to feed our brain and our spirit in order to display the fruits of the Spirit: joy, love, peace, hope, gentleness, right? We want to display that. We need to feed our brain. So let's jump into this a little bit more detail. So blood sugar, so critical here. So you can see normal blood glucose. We eat a meal, sugar is going to go up. Even if it's a low carb meal, your blood sugar will go up. Then this hormone called insulin, which helps take sugar out of the bloodstream and puts it into the cells, goes up. And so you can kind of see this. Normally insulin, right, should rise and fall along with the blood sugar. Now here's what happens, okay? Oftentimes a lot of people will over-secrete insulin. I know I'm an over-secreter. So if I have a lot of carbs, I'm going to shoot my insulin way up. This is why we need to be on a low-carb diet, lots of good fats, because or else we get this spike of insulin, spike of blood sugar, and then what happens? Sugar drops, and it drops below this, below the threshold that it should. So we go in a state of hypoglycemia, all right, where our blood sugar drops too low, and now our brain is starving for sugar. It burns up the sugar quickly. It's starving. It needs more sugar. So it opens up the blood-brain barrier, creates inflammation throughout the brain, sets off neurotransmitter cascades, and what we call excitotoxicity, which damages brain cells. Then we've got all these different electrolytes seeping out, which just overstimulate all the cells around different regions of the brain. This signals up the amygdala, the anterior cingulate cortex, creates a stress response, and we have problems and anxiety. So got to keep the blood sugar stable. All right. And the way that we do that is through a diet that's rich in good fats. Okay. I'm a big fan of a low carb diet or maybe even a ketogenic diet. We're loading up on good fats, coconut oil, coconut products, avocados, grass-fed butter or ghee, pasture-raised eggs. I like olives and olive oil, all really, really good. And that's a staple. That's where we want to get most of our calories. I recommend getting about 60%, 60, maybe even up to 70, 75% of your calories from these good fats. So these good fats should be in everything. Like basically you want to have good fats in there. Then we want a lot of antioxidants. Where are we going to get the antioxidants? Non-starchy vegetables. Okay, we want to make sure we're consuming a lot of good green vegetables, non-starchy. So the starchy ones are going to be like the tubers, sweet potatoes, and things like that. We can do that, but we don't want to do that too often. Instead, we want lots of non-starchy veggies. We want lots of herbs, basil, oregano, thyme, rosemary, oregano. In our society, we don't use enough of these herbs. We want to use a lot of herbs. You want your meal to smell amazing. And you use those Italian herbs, rosemary and thyme and basil and oregano. They smell so good. They taste good. They're great for the gut. They're carminative, so they help to modulate or coordinate the muscle contractions in your gut, help reduce cramping, bloating, help keep the bowels moving well. So good for the body. They kill off bad bacteria and viruses and parasites and yeast. So they're just so good. We want to make sure we're getting a lot of those. Lemons and limes, rich in vitamin C as well as vitamin P, citrus bioflavonoids, which help with capillary permeability and getting more blood flow into the brain. We want berries, things like raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, so good. Those antioxidants rich in anthocyanins, which is amazing antioxidant for the brain. So we want to get a lot of those in our diet. Clean protein, so grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, organic poultry, wild game like lamb, bison, antelope, different things like that, all awesome for the body. So get a good clean protein. Getting nuts and seeds for fiber. So almonds, pecans, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, Brazil nuts, right? These things are awesome, but we don't want tremendous amounts. So I have them up high because they can be rough on the gut and they can cause food sensitivities. But we do want those in moderation. Fermented foods, one of the best things for the gut, sauerkraut, kimchi, coconut water kefir, different things like that. We want to be getting fermented foods. I recommend every solid food meal. So if you're going to have eggs, if you're going to have like say grass-fed beef and veggies or something like that, every meal, especially with meat or animal protein, you should be having fermented foods with that. Okay, you can have like as little as 2 to 3 tablespoons of fermented foods with that meal, and that's going to help the digestive process and provide enzymes, good bacteria to help the metabolism of, basically help stimulate stomach acid, stimulate pancreatic enzymes, bile production, so that way you're able to break down those animal proteins effectively and get good digestion. And natural sweeteners, we want things like stevia, monk fruits, okay, really, really good. If you're going to do honey or maple syrup, do small quantities because the blood sugar effect. And you can see some of the great recipes I recommend, like our blueberry gut healing protein shakes right there, and our this is a coconut whipped cream cookie. So coconut whipped cream on the middle, just tastes awesome. And you can find these on drjockers.com, all our great recipes. So you see, breathing is so critical, and breathing can help to stimulate your amygdala and create the stress response, or it can stimulate your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and relax the brain and allow the brain to be naturally motivated, stay on task, and be able to be productive. The key is slowing down your breathing. Average individuals breathing 12 to 18 breaths per minute. That's fight or flight response. So that's that sort of breathing pattern. The body says, I'm in danger, I'm in danger, I'm in danger, every time we're having that sort of breathing pattern. Now, we want something like that. We want a rapid breathing for short periods of time, like when we're exercising intensely, because that helps to improve our body's ability to adapt and to get more respiration and increase our ability to oxygenate. But we don't want it all day long. Most of the day, we want to have long, slow, deep breathing, because that's going to teach our body that we're in a rest, digest, and heal physiology. When we relax our breathing, it helps us digest our meal more effectively. It helps our body to heal, break down old tissue, regenerate new tissue more effectively. So if we're in chronic fight or flight, because we're doing these short, shallow breaths, we're not going to be able to heal, regenerate, and rebuild effectively. So we're going to end up with a lot of problems in that case, because if we have poor healing mechanisms in our body, if our body's not healing and not able to adapt and repair to the stress that we're under, then we're going to be catabolic. We're going to constantly be breaking down. We're going to be overinflamed. Our joints are going to degenerate. We're going to have problems. So breathing can be so critical for this process and really stopping that fight or flight stress response and stimulating the rest, heal, and repair physiology. Earthing, we were made to be out in the woods, right? To be barefoot, to be lying on grass. We were made to do this. We were made to be in touch with nature. Today's day and age, we can live our whole lives out of a touch with nature, never walking barefoot on grass, dirt, sand, or even concrete, never sitting next to trees, but instead just walking around in our house, walking around with rubber soles. And those rubber soles on our shoes block the natural electromagnetic frequency of the earth. We want to be in touch with that electromagnetic frequency because it will reduce the stress response and help stimulate that rest, heal, repair, and digest physiology. That is what we want. So let's make sure that, that we are locking in on that and really resting, relaxing our body. So with that being said, all right, these are things that we can do. Taking off our shoes, sitting down barefoot, okay, walking, doing like a barefoot walk, let your body touch the earth, right? So just being in touch with the earth, sitting next to a tree. These are all things that you can do to get more activity with the earth, okay? Also, again, getting out in the sun, so powerful for our body. Vitamin D regulates a lot of activity in the brain, including neurotransmitters. And so it will really help with serotonin, the right amount of GABA, which is kind of like the brakes on the brain, so we don't get overstimulation of the brain. It's going to really, really help everything as far as allowing the brain to function the way it's supposed to. So getting good sun exposure or supplementing with vitamin D. We need to keep the gut healthy. There's an intimate relationship between the gut and the brain. We say leaky gut equals leaky brain. So when the gut is damaged, it will affect the brain. And for many people, this leads to anxiety. So when they eat something like gluten, for example, or dairy, something that's very irritating to the gut, these people, a lot of people will notice anxiety. To the attention of many individuals that I've worked with chronic anxiety. And after eliminating things like gluten and dairy from their diet, they noticed significant changes with doing that. And that's because they were overexciting their brain because they were damaging their gut. So getting the gut healthy by eliminating foods like grains, sugar, corn, peanut dairy fat like grass-fed butter or ghee, but staying away from dairy proteins, particularly casein protein, will really help with reducing anxiety. So those are all really important things. Corn, soy, I would stay away from. Obviously sugar, I would stay away from high sugar fruits. Okay, so don't eat like a whole bunch of sugar, high sugar fruits all at once as well. Okay, keep your blood sugar stable and under control. Use lots of good fats like we had already talked about, and that's going to help heal the gut. Adding in these fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, coconut water kefir, pickles are a good one. Pickled ginger is a really good one. So adding some of these things in on a regular basis, we talked about that, 2 to 3 tablespoons at least with a meat-containing meal, maybe up to, let's say, 6 tablespoons. So you don't want excessive amounts, all right, because it could cause more issues with bacterial overgrowth. However, having several tablespoons with a meat-containing meal is going to help with natural stimulation of hydrochloric acid, bile, pancreatic enzymes. It's going to help to nourish the gut by providing good prebiotics, really help restore the body. So definitely getting those fermented foods in. Laughing a lot. So laughing, we know, stimulates endorphins. One of the best things we can do for pain relief and for overcoming depression and anxiety is making sure we're laughing a lot because of the release of endorphins, which make us feel good. It's going to reduce stress hormones and put us more into that healing physiology. Also, it's going to activate that prefrontal or that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which will increase our creativity. We'll get anti-aging hormone secretion. And ultimately, as we all know, laughing a lot is going to make life so much more enjoyable. So be sure to do that. We want to make sure we're doing magnesium. I was talking about this earlier. Magnesium is to the body what oil is to the car. It's so critical for blood sugar stability, which we kind of started this presentation talking about, making sure we keep that blood sugar stable. If we're magnesium deficient, we won't be able to do that. Really important for overall cellular energy production, good circulation, blood pressure, pain relief, flexibility, good sleep. So critical for over 300 major functions in the body. And the kind of magnesium I recommend as far as a supplement is a magnesium L-threonate. In fact, I've got a special formulation I put together. It's called Brain Calm Magnesium. And this is the most powerful form of magnesium that's out on the market. And it really, really good for helping to reduce the overstimulation of the brain. So when I use this, and I use this really throughout the day, when I use it in the morning or in the mid-afternoon like I did today, it helps to allow me to focus. And I feel like my brain just functions more fluid. It's almost like, basically like a car that's just driving with more ease, getting the tires rotated, getting, the engine cleaned out, and now it just drives with ease. And that's really what happens when I use the Brain Calm Magnesium, because it helps to coordinate the stimulation of the different neurotransmitters in the brain. So you don't get too much excitatory activity and not too little inhibitory activity. I mean, ultimately our brain cells are constantly being fluxed with both excitatory and inhibitory signaling molecules. So we constantly have this going on. We want good balance. If we have too much excitatory activity, we're going to end up with things like anxiety, brain inflammation, trouble sleeping at night. If we have too much inhibitory activity, we can end up with things like depression. We can end up with just lower levels of motivation and just really being tired oftentimes and slow to thought, slow cognitive processing, poor memory. So that can all be too low or too much inhibitory signaling molecules. So the magnesium really helps regulate that so we get optimal stress balance. So we don't have too much stress, but we're able to perform well. It's going to help us sleep good, ensure a healthy mood. I mean, it's just so powerful for us, regulates that calcium magnesium balance in the cells. So great supplement to use. And if you have anxiety, I would definitely recommend using this. drjockers.com, you can find that. GABA, let's talk about a little bit about GABA. This is like the brakes to the car. So GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So somebody with anxiety would want more GABA to help calm the brain. So great supplement for GABA. And I have a whole presentation on GABA. So check that out too, a whole video on it. But the supplement I use is called Mood Protect, which has GABA. It has 5-HTP to help support serotonin production. It has L-theanine, which is key for GABA and serotonin. It also has some other nutrients, some B vitamins, vitamin C, all really key for helping to balance out overstimulation of excitatory neurotransmitters in the brain to help somebody overcome anxiety. So that's the Mood Protect supplement. And again, you can find that on my website, drjockers.com. Finally, we want to be speaking life and scriptures over ourselves. One of my favorites is Psalm 55:22. Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. This is a powerful one to speak over yourself, reminding yourself that God will never allow you to be shaken and defeated, but instead he will allow you to take your rightful place, right? Rise up and be the victory and the overcomer in life. And so we speak that over ourselves like a declaration. And naturally, we're going to be motivated and excited, and it's going to help reduce the fear and allow us to function at our full potential and really be the person God's called us to be. We've got all these different scriptures for healing, which are so powerful. And we want to be speaking these things over ourselves on a daily basis. I don't think there's anything more powerful than speaking words of life. For me, that means scripture. For you, I'm not sure what it means, but I would recommend words of life, things that are uplifting, things that give you hope and a promise. And, if you're looking for that, I would definitely recommend the Bible, right? Or right here, we've got 5 great verses right there for you to just give you peace in a time of trial and a time of stress. Because God came to be the Prince of Peace. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And he came to give us a peace that surpasses all understanding. And, in the book of Isaiah, it says, the fruit of righteousness, when we are following in integrity with our life, The fruit of righteousness is peace. The effect of righteousness is quietness and confidence forever. It means our brain is not full of all these chaotic thoughts, but instead it's quiet, it's calm. And it gives us confidence that we can rise above the challenges in our life forever. So let that be your motivation, your inspiration for today. And if you want more about the topics we talked about in a full program to help you overcome anxiety or whatever other brain disorder you may be dealing with, I have a whole program on my website. It's called the Super Brain Program. You can check that out on drjockers.com. It's a pretty awesome program. I think you'll love it. With that being said, guys, this is it for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed today's presentation, and we will see you back on a future presentation. God bless you guys. Bye.